Well, hi, it's Jennifer. Welcome to my channel. This video is a video in a series where I am documenting myself using the 10 glucose hacks from author and biochemist Jessie Inchauspe. She wrote the global bestseller Glucose Revolution and the follow-up bestseller book called The Glucose Goddess Method. It's a companion to her first book. I have used her 10 glucose lowering hacks as a project back in September in a coaching program that I was part of, and I responded very, very well to using those hacks. It helped with my cravings and my body was able to release weight. Unfortunately, once I stopped using those hacks and went back to my normal eating, I put that weight back on and then my cravings increased. But I learned at the end of 2024 that my fasting glucose levels were the highest they had ever been. And my A1C number was back in the pre-diabetic pool. I have continued to yo-yo in and out of the pre-diabetic pool with my A1C numbers. I have seen a couple of dietitians, and one dietitian in particularly last year, who we tried a couple of ways of eating that my body did not respond to. She then introduced me to Jessie Inchauspe and her work and suggested that I start using some of her hacks to see how my body would respond. That is what I began doing, and then I did it with intention for that 30-day project. I had success during that month when I was committed to using those hacks. My body responded positively, but I still had not quite made the connection that it was my high sugar levels that were giving me a lot of the unwanted symptoms, and of course high fasting blood sugar and high A1C numbers. I didn't connect that it was because of the way that I was eating. I have been offered metformin, but I am hoping to try to see if I can lower my A1C numbers permanently and also lower my fasting glucose permanently by using these glucose lowering hacks to set me up for life. That's what I'm looking for. I want to have a metabolically sound body. I want to prevent damage that comes from having high blood sugar spikes. I want to be at a good, healthy weight. I want to be fit and strong. I don't want to have the mood swings. I don't want to have the cravings. I want to, hopefully, as best as I can, give my body everything that it needs to be as optimum as it can be with whatever it is I'm facing in life, and even just going in life. That is my goal. Now that I've had my education after getting my blood work and realizing it's my high blood sugar levels, I am committed to trying these glucose hacks for the next 13 weeks to see what the results will be in my body. I have blood work coming in May, and I really hope to see good results. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm documenting the process. The first week, I focus mainly on savory breakfast. And in Jessie Inchauspe's Glucose Goddess Method, which was a book written to help people implement these 10 glucose hacks, she suggests as one of the top hacks to begin with is to start with a savory breakfast. And in last week's video, I share what those parameters are. This week, I continued to experiment with different recipes. The goal was to eat a substantial enough breakfast that I would be full for 4 hours. And that's what I worked on. And I have to say it worked. One of the things that she says is you might find that you have to eat more than what you thought you would eat. I really focused on that. And I have to say that my cravings have significantly gone down. Before I put myself on this glucose lowering challenge, and before I even thought that I would film it, my weight was creeping up. I was having a lot of symptoms associated with high sugar spikes, and my cravings were out of control. I was craving sweet all of the time. And I have to say that now over these past 2 weeks, and before I started officially starting this challenge, I was already implementing some of those glucose hacks. My cravings have gone down significantly, which is huge. I have a very strong sugar sweet tooth. What really stood out to me this week as far as my habits go was I had to decide to make adjustments in my schedule. You know how it is. I'm sure you're the same way too. You start your day off and you're really busy and you've got all this morning routine. And sometimes I feel like I try to cram more into my morning routine than what I actually have time to do. I had to specifically make adjustments so that I gave myself enough time to properly prepare a savory breakfast. One morning I had a doctor's appointment and I got up really early. I usually get up between the hours of 4 and 5 a.m. So I'm an up early person, but I cram a lot in my morning routine. And as time was going by in my morning, I was still trying to get my workout in before I had to get in the shower, go to my doctor's appointment. But I was realizing if I went and did my workout, I was not going to have the right amount of time to prepare a proper breakfast so that it would sustain me for the 4 hours. I had to make the decision to not work out at that point and come up into the kitchen and make myself a proper meal. The other day was the same thing. I found myself really busy. I was trying to do, I almost thought I would just kind of rush a breakfast and throw something together really fast. But I said, no, you are going to take the time. You are going to curate your breakfast so that it is hearty and you're not going to rush it and you're going to make sure you eat it. Food prepping is a way to help. And that's something I'm going to start working on this week, is also food prepping ahead of time for certain elements of my breakfast. For example, last night I made a black lentil curry one pot stew. It's a curry and coconut milk and black. Oh, it's very, very delicious. Very, very yummy. Since I've been paying attention to the glycemic index, last week I cooked a lot with garbanzo beans, and garbanzo beans on a scale of 1 to 100 with that glycemic index, and I talk about that more in last week's video, garbanzo beans score at a 10. And on that scale, it's broken low, medium, and high. Low is any food that scores 50 and below is considered low. Garbanzo beans were down at 10, even though they're a starch. They are low in spiking glucose. They don't really spike glucose because of the protein and fiber. I made the lentils, and black lentils specifically ranked at a 22. So that's incredible. Last night I prepped that food prep so for this morning's breakfast, and I'm going to show you that clip. I was able to get my workout in this morning, but definitely food prepping the night before. So I had that black lentil element to add to my egg omelet. Really helped out. And that's something I'm also going to work on. Sometimes I have time to cook a more elaborate breakfast. Other times I don't, but definitely preparing for that breakfast time is really important. And I have found too that sometimes, depending on the meal, I will be full for over 4 hours. I sometimes won't start getting hungry until the 5-hour point, which is really impressive. Now, I also have a recipe that I'm going to add. I'm going to do a voiceover at the end of this video. I will show you a breakfast that I made. Now, for this week, I'm going to start adding vinegar drink. And I'm going to read from Jessie's book about vinegar. So that's hack 2. Hack 1 is start your day with a savory breakfast built around protein, fat, fiber, sugar only in the form of whole fruit, and starch for taste. You don't want to have anything sweet, no sugar whatsoever. Oh, and you know what? I had this, it was last week. I often, when I'm done eating, a substantial meal, I will crave something sweet. That's been a habit of mine for so many years. I love to keep my Hershey Kisses in the fridge. And after a meal, I love to go to the fridge and get a cold chocolate, pop it in my mouth, sometimes 4 or 5. And I always loved doing that after a meal. Last week, I was having a really strong craving, but I had had some salmon. So I thought, well, I'm going to go floss my teeth and like brush out the fish before I have a chocolate. And just getting up, getting out of the kitchen, going into the bathroom, flossing and cleaning my teeth allowed that craving to pass, because Jessie does say you can have a sweet. And that's a beautiful thing too about this method. It is not about counting calories. I have been counting no calories at all. And I love that, because when I think about something long term, I don't want to have to be counting calories. I have tried using FitPal, my Fitness Pal. I am one of those people, I just do not like logging foods. I hate logging foods. I don't want to have to count calories. And what I love about her method is it is not about counting calories. It is about focusing on the metabolic hormonal impact in your body depending on the certain types of foods that you eat, and working on lowering your glucose so you don't have a high insulin response, which causes fat storage and more cravings and just a vicious cycle. And I love that. To me, that's something sustainable. She says you can have your chocolate. You can have your sweet. Just have it later in the day. It's not a food group. Do not have it on an empty stomach. Have it as dessert. And I'm like, well, that's doable. But when I was having that craving last week, it was after lunch, and just getting up and doing something else, getting my mind off of that sweet craving, helped me reset my mind and think, okay, well, I'll wait till later to have my treat. And I'll enjoy it more in the evening when I can relax and savor it, versus I'm running around now getting ready for the second half of the day, popping chocolate in my mouth and not really savoring it. So that was something helpful. If maybe you're struggling with a craving of sweet and it's either after breakfast, or you can have it after lunch, after a meal. For me, I wanted to wait until later. Getting up and doing something else really, really helped. Now for this week, the next hack is having a vinegar drink. So I'm going to read to you what she says. So she says, your objective for week 2 is to continue your savory breakfasts and then to start deploying the vinegar hack, she says. Like a secret agent on a mission, you can use this hack tactically. Have your vinegar when it's most advantageous for you and will most effectively slash your glucose spikes. She says the objective is to consume 1 tablespoon of vinegar each day. And she said you can do all different ways that, you could make it as a vinaigrette and pour it over a salad. For me, I like to use the apple cider with the mother. I'll put it in a big glass of kind of lukewarm water so it's easier to get down, and I drink it down really fast. So there's different ways that you can get it in. Here's the science behind the vinegar. She says that scientists have found that vinegar, and it doesn't matter which type, contain a powerful component called acetic acid. When we give acetic acid to our body, a few mind-blowing things happen. First, it slows down the rate at which our digestive enzymes break down sugars and starches into glucose. This is good because as this process slows down, glucose molecules hit our system softly, leading to a smaller spike. Second, once acetic acid gets into the bloodstream, it penetrates our muscles and it encourages our muscles to soak up glucose molecules that are floating around and store them for exercise. And she says, of course, there's different ways that you can do this. You can drizzle it, you can put it in water. Oh, and she says pickling as well. And she says you can have your vinegar at any time during the day. Most people will have the entire tablespoon of vinegar in the morning before their savory breakfast because they find it easier to remember to do it then. But if you can also sip it in small amounts during the course of the day until you get a total of 1 tablespoon, that's another option. While any time is fine, the most powerful moment to have your vinegar is before eating something sweet, like a sugary snack, a cookie bar, bar of chocolate, dessert, anything, or before eating something starchy like pasta bread or potatoes or rices, because it will significantly reduce the glucose spike of that sweet or starchy food. And she says, remember, sweet and starchy foods are the foods that are most likely to create spikes because they break down into glucose as we digest them. And as I show you my breakfast that I made the other day, I will go ahead and read a few more details and voice over and talk about the vinegar. I am going to be employing the vinegar drink. I will probably save mine for either my lunch meal or my dinner meal in the evening, maybe even particularly my dinner meal, because that's usually when I'll have something sweet. In the morning, I am having a few starches. I did have brown jasmine rice with my meal, and that ranked at a 50. It's still considered low. And then I also have some Japanese sweet potatoes that I want to cook this week. And I'll continue to show you some different recipes throughout the week. I weighed myself every day, first thing in the morning, for 7 days this week. Last week, my average weight was 152.9. And when I would step on the scale, I would mostly see the 153 number. I think I saw 153 at least 3 times, if not 4. I want to say 4. And then I saw the 152. Yeah, because I only did 6 days last week. I saw those twice. My average weight for last week was 152.9. This week, when I would step on the scale first thing in the morning, I saw more 151s, which was pretty amazing. This morning, I was 151 exactly. But my average for the week was 152 even. That is a wonderful sign. It's very, very little. I am just implementing the glucose hacks, focusing on savory breakfast, now adding the vinegar to it. I am also continuing to journal in my book daily. I write, what is my project? Why is it important to me? And what will I do today? So I'm reminding myself, keeping myself on track. Definitely doing the daily journaling has really, really helped. In my daily journal, I'm writing out the date, I write out my weight, and then I ask myself the 3 questions. What is my project? Which my project is to use 1 or more of the glucose hacks per meal by Jessie Inchauspe. Why is it important to me? And then what will I do today? And the why is it important to me is so critical. I attended a Tony Robbins seminar last year called Unleash the Power, and it was amazing. The whole foundation of that seminar was helping individuals identify patterns in their lives that were not working. And in order to make a change, you have to have what he calls enough leverage, because oftentimes it's really easy for us to recognize areas in our lives where we need to make a change. But sometimes it can be hard to actually make the change completely. Or you might recognize, okay, I need to make a change in this particular area. You decide to do the change, but then you kind of go back to your old patterns. And he calls that the dance. And I know I have been guilty of that in a lot of different areas in my life. I have areas where I recognize I need to make a change. And I might do it for a little bit, but if I don't have what he calls leverage, or a compelling enough reason to make a change, chances are I'm going to go back to my old ways. And with the journaling process with Mel Robbins, if you do that, so you write, what is your project, whatever it may be. If you want to change that pattern, what is that thing? It's the why is it important to you? Every time that I am journaling, what's my project? Why is it important to me? And what will I do today? I am creating leverage. I am reminding myself why it's important for me to make these health changes. Every day when I write out my journal, that's creating leverage. Because back in September, when I tried this challenge, now granted, I really did not quite fully comprehend what was happening within my body, but I definitely knew that I could clean things up a little bit, that I was probably eating too many sweets, probably eating too much junk in general, but I had not quite fully connected what will work for me, but I knew that I did want to make a change. When I had success in September, when I followed these hacks, it would have been smart for me just to continue on, but no, I did it, saw success, and I just went right back. I should have stayed. I mean, I released 5 pounds, for goodness sake. Well, I went back to my old ways and sure enough, put the 5 pounds back on, and now here I am. And a way to not go back and forth is to create leverage in answering the question of why something is important to you. Gives you leverage and tells your brain what to focus on. So that way you can, as Tony Robbins calls it, he says, cut the legs off of that decision. Because we'll make the decision to change, but oftentimes if we're not really, really, really committed, we'll go back. And he says you need to make that compelling enough decision so you cut the legs off so you don't go back. That's what I'm going to be working on, and maybe that might be something that'll help you. I will be implementing that vinegar hack. I'll show you my foods. I'll be checking in. I'm thinking potentially next week I might do maybe little check-ins every couple of days as well, kind of shake things up for this 13-week video challenge. And until the next video, I'll see you then. Bye.
All right, well, before I get into reading from Jessie's book, I am getting ready to prep for one of my breakfast meals that I had earlier today, and that's what you see here. I started off with some sparkling water, and I like to squeeze lemon or limes. If I'm not drinking the zero sugar Waterloo drinks, which I do enjoy those, I do enjoy the Pellegrinos or any type of plain sparkling water where I can squeeze in lemon juice or lime juice. It makes it taste extra special and delicious and has a really nice crisp quality to it. Making a change to my sugary drink intake has been something that has made a tremendous difference. And I know now pairing that with my savory breakfast and these other glucose hacks are going to make such a big difference. But I am used to those zero sugar drinks now, which has been helpful, and especially for the no sugar rule. And the nice thing is the more that you do something, it will become familiar and you will get used to the changes that you make. And that has happened with me with my sugary drinks. Here I am cutting some baby portobello mushrooms. I'm doing a spinach egg omelet saute with sriracha, which is my favorite topping for eggs. I am going to continue reading from Jessie's book on the vinegar hack. When I read earlier, we read that the acetic acid in vinegar, it slows down the rate at which our digestive enzymes break down sugar and starches into glucose, and which leads to smaller glucose spikes. And then second, acetic acid gets into the bloodstream, penetrates the muscles, and encourages the muscles to soak up glucose molecules that are floating around and store them for next exercise. She goes on to say these two factors, glucose being released into the body more slowly, and then the muscles taking up the molecules quickly, mean that there is less free-flowing glucose present. 1 tablespoon of vinegar before a meal can reduce the glucose spike of that meal by up to 30%, and the insulin spike by up to 20%, thereby reducing inflammation, slowing down aging, increasing energy, balancing our hormones, and helping our brain. She goes on to say, what's more, acetic acid not only reduces the amount of insulin present, which helps us get back into fat burning mode, it also has a remarkable effect on our DNA. She says it tells our DNA to reprogram slightly so that our mitochondria burn more fat. A study found that when people added vinegar before their meats for 3 months, and personally I thought this was very interesting, she goes on to say that they reduce their visceral fat, waist and hip measurements, and triglyceride levels. I have really gotten into mushrooms lately. I enjoyed the texture of these baby portobello mushrooms, and I also felt that they were gentle on my stomach. I do have a lot of food intolerances. Some mushrooms don't always agree with me, but these baby portobellos have, and I love eggs. It is one of my staple foods. Of course, this is one of my favorite ways to prepare my omelet. And those cute little salt and pepper pork shakers are adorable. But anyway, here's some tips from the community in Jessie's book about the vinegar. One person says the quality of vinegar makes a big difference to how tasty it is. If you don't like the flavor of the vinegar you regularly use at home, try a different kind. I mean, I've tried pomegranate vinegar before. I really am fond of the apple cider vinegar, but there are a lot of different types of vinegars that you can try. I guess you'd have to make sure there's no sugar in it, like no syrupy vinegars. Another person says measure your dosage of vinegar is also important. It's common to make yourself a drink that's too strong if you just eyeball the quantity. Someone says it's the easiest time to take your daily vinegar is in the morning with or before breakfast. You'll be more likely to remember it then. For those of you who would rather have your vinegar later in the day, you could put it in like mocktails or teas or anything like that if you want. You can sip your vinegar while you're cooking a meal, and you can make it a ritual by using a fancy glass, whatever it is that you need to do to help you to be successful about it. In Jessie's book, there's a section in here that says how to make your own vinegar hack. She says all you need is 1 tablespoon of the vinegar of your choice. Apple cider vinegar and white vinegar are the most popular vinegars to drink, and a vehicle to get it in your body. This vehicle could be a drink, either tea or a mocktail, or a food such as pickles or a salad. It's completely up to you. And then she has recipes in the book. So I'll have to look through some of these and give them a try this week and let you know how they come out. And she says you can combine vinegar with any other ingredient. Just avoid mixing it with sugar, honey, agave, or maple syrup, or fruit juice, because that would negate its effects. If you're making a drink and want to add some sweetness, she says you can add a few drops of stevia. I am adding 1 cup of cooked brown jasmine rice. I like to prepare jasmine rice and keep it in the fridge. I like to make a good amount of it, and then that way I can just pull a serving whenever I need to. I'll wet down a paper towel, sprinkle some water over the brown jasmine rice, and it just reconstitutes well and comes out looking very fresh and moist. This breakfast kept me satiated for, I think it was at least 5 hours. It was a long time. And I have really enjoyed feeling satiated for so long in the morning. It has really helped out, and I noticed the difference in my cravings. Until the next video, I will be building my savory breakfast and trying the vinegar hack, and I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.